Tonight, let's lean in close to the fire and talk about something meaningful. What did it mean to be a man in ancient Hebrew thought? Not abstract ideals, but concrete responsibilities. Fields, families, covenant, worship. Then let's compare that with Greco-Roman culture. We're drawing from scripture sources for the Hebrew perspective, Old Hebrew and Greek Bible manuscripts. There's a story here worth sharing. So, let's get started.
In Genesis, Adam was placed in the garden to work and guard it. That was his task. Responsibility, not domination. Abraham was chosen to command his household in righteousness. Circumcision marked covenant responsibility on the male body.
Picture it. Men out in the fields binding sheaves, then at home by firelight teaching sons the Shema. Fathers reciting Torah, welcoming strangers like Abraham, defending neighbors at the city gate. Manhood was lived in responsibility, provision, teaching, justice, hospitality.
Men carried household responsibility, providing food, clothing, inheritance. They were to teach Torah diligently to children. Torah also charged them to defend widows and orphans, those who would suffer if men failed.
And worship too. Fathers bringing sacrifices, Levites serving, kings leading songs like David. Men were visible in worship, but their role was to lead in faithfulness, not just form.
When men neglected these things, prophets cried out, "Defend the widow! Care for the orphan!" Accountability was constant.
The scriptures are blunt about men's failures. Adam's silence, Eli neglecting his sons, David abusing Bathsheba's dignity, Israel's men turning to idols. Prophets rebuked them for crushing the poor and exploiting the vulnerable.
Every failure meant someone else paid the price. Widows, children, the poor. Hebrew manhood was never a private ideal. It carried public consequences.
Yet we also see faithful men. Moses interceding for Israel like a father for children. Boaz shielding Ruth. Job opening his tent to strangers. Nehemiah organizing people to rebuild walls with prayer and courage.
Not perfect, but faithful, carrying responsibility with humility.
Now let's turn our focus on how men were seen in the Greco-Roman world. This is the backdrop of the New Testament, a world of Athens and Rome, where philosophies and laws shaped life very differently than in Israel. Ready? Here, manhood sounded very different. Let's ask, what did it mean to be a man in the Greco-Roman world?
In Greece, philosophers framed it. Plato at times imagined women as capable of virtue, but Aristotle was blunt. Men were rational, women deficient. Manhood was reason, rule, and visibility in the polis.
Picture Athens, marble columns, debates in the agora. Yet citizenship belonged only to free men. Women, slaves, foreigners, excluded. A man was measured by his presence in public life, his power in household, his control of passions.
Already we hear the contrast. Hebrew responsibility versus Greek dominance.
Rome sharpened this into law. At the center stood the paterfamilias, the father with near-total authority. He could arrange marriages, control property, even decide life or death in earlier days.
Imagine a Roman villa. At its center, the man presiding, wife under his authority, children subject, slaves as possessions. Outside, his honor tied to military service, political office, patronage networks.
Roman manhood was control. Household, property, reputation. But did it make shepherds or masters?
Stoics taught men to master themselves, remain calm, pursue virtue. Epicureans sought tranquility in measured pleasures. But both assumed men superior, women secondary.
Masculinity became a performance. Honor and shame acted on the stage of society. A true man conquered his rivals, dominated his household, mastered his passions.
Rome demanded soldierly service. Courage in war and ambition in politics defined manhood. Only men could be magistrates, senators, emperors. Public ritual excluded women.
Manhood tethered to state and sword. A man was what he could conquer, command, and control.
Greek and Roman writers gave household codes: husband over wife, father over children, master over slaves. Aristotle's politics became a template, echoed by moralists and even Jewish thinkers like Philo.
Against this backdrop, New Testament teaching was quietly revolutionary. Submit to one another. Husbands, love as Messiah loved. Not Roman domination, but cruciform care.
Hebrew men were guardians, teachers, protectors of the vulnerable. Greco-Roman men were masters, warriors, seekers of honor. One vision raised shepherds, the other bred lords.
And the early church lived in this tension, reshaping Roman forms with Hebrew covenant light, recentering manhood under Messiah's love. Now let's focus on today, specifically on men in the modern church. The question is simple but significant. Do Christian men today reflect Hebrew covenant responsibility, or do they embody Greco-Roman dominance? And perhaps more challenging, how did we get here?
In the Hebrew vision, men guarded, provided, taught Torah, defended widows and orphans, and led in worship. Abraham instructed his household. Boaz protected Ruth. Job opened his tent to the stranger. Prophets called men to justice and humility. It was about responsibility, not dominance.
But Greco-Roman men, they were measured by power: citizen, soldier, senator, paterfamilias. Aristotle called men rational, women deficient. The Roman father ruled his household with near-total authority. Honor was gained through conquest, control, and public recognition.
Two inheritances: Hebrew covenant care, Roman dominance. And the early church stood between them.
The first assemblies reflected Hebrew faithfulness. Men taught households, prayed, shepherded, and loved their wives sacrificially. Paul named men and women alike as co-workers in Romans 16.
Yet Roman influence pressed in. Household codes echoed empire, but Paul reshaped them. Husbands, love as Messiah loved. A cruciform love, not Roman control. Imagine how radical that sounded in a world of paterfamilias.
Medieval knights exalted protection, but often wrapped it in dominance. Parish life restricted leadership to male clerics. The Reformation elevated marriage, but sometimes narrowed headship into authoritarian patterns.
And still, there were exceptions. Quakers, Anabaptists, revivalists, men and women ministering side by side. The Spirit refused to be boxed in.
In Awakenings, men preached revivals, but women too. In Victorian times, separate spheres confined men to breadwinning and women to the home. In the 20th century, Pentecostals normalized women's leadership, while other movements reinforced hierarchy.
Today, American churches live in a kaleidoscope. Some men are called back to Hebrew servant strength. Others cling to Greco-Roman dominance, repackaged in Christian terms.
Sometimes we celebrate exceptional men, pastors, reformers, missionaries, but neglect to form ordinary men for ordinary covenant faithfulness, teaching children, defending the vulnerable, welcoming the stranger.
Across the firelight, three portraits of manhood come into focus. In ancient Hebrew life, men were covenant allies before Yahweh. In the Greco-Roman world, manhood shifted toward dominance, who measured honor by control, conquest, and public recognition. The modern church in America carries both inheritances, sometimes calling men back to Hebrew, servant strength, sometimes echoing Greco-Roman habits of hierarchy dressed in Christian words. The path forward is not nostalgia, but renewal.
May every man choose the path of covenant care over Greco-Roman control, to walk not as lords, but as faithful allies in Messiah's household.